All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome, everybody, to the Life Point Table Talk podcast. Today we are continuing with our Bible reading reflection. My name is Jason. I'm here with Brother Tyler.
Hello.
And today we are checking in here on week 8 of our reading. I hope you guys are following along, and if you're not, check it out anyway.
Yeah,
Follow
never
us.
too late.
Never too late.
Yeah,
Jump on in.
Jump in. Water's warm.
The water is warm. Today, we're coming in hot. Numbers 1 through 15, and we got Mark 3 through 6, 32. Not the whole thing, just 32. So, let's go ahead and get in here. Tyler, why don't you give us a little intro to Numbers, numbers.
Yes, Numbers. One of the cool things about the week 8 here is the fact that it starts right at Numbers 1. So that was a really cool break starting the brand new week, because the whole 5 books of Moses that they call the Pentateuch, it's just one continuous story. Like Exodus ends, it's Leviticus, it just flows straight through. Leviticus ends, it flows straight through to Numbers, and it's just really cool when you look at it that way. And as far as that narrative goes, it actually has a lot to do with the naming of the book. We call it Numbers because it starts off with a bunch of numbers, numbering all the tribes and preparing for, potential future battles and the way they're going to travel and the way they camp and all that stuff. But the actual Hebrew name for the book is In the Wilderness.
Oh, wow.
And that's what Numbers is. It's, I forget how many total chapters, but it's a story of their journey from Mount Sinai to the Promised Land and all the stuff and chaos that ensues in between.
Right.
And who gets to go, who doesn't get to go. And it's just an awesome, amazing story. And it's just a great book. I'm just loving Numbers.
Yeah, and it really... I was reading it, it felt like there was not much of a break. The story just continues on. Felt like the same book as Leviticus, really.
Yeah.
When it starts out there.
There's all that priestly stuff and all the sacrifices, and now that that's set up, we have the tabernacle. Let's go.
Yeah. Right. So we start off in Numbers 1. We're talking about numbers, and like Tyler said, they are counting all the tribes and clans. So it's all the males 20 and above, I believe, and those able to go to war are the people they're numbering. So there's obviously more than that.
Yeah.
In the camp.
And yeah, I think it ends up 600 some thousand is the total number.
600,000. 550 or 603,000. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think that most of the the biblical egghead scholars, when you count the others as well, it's like 2 million people.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah, I think growing up, I think in my head I was picturing like a couple hundred people, maybe.
Yeah.
If that.
And there's some debate about the numbers and what the Hebrew means and all that good stuff, but regardless, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because back when they were in Egypt, Pharaoh was starting to freak out. It's like, man, this is a lot of folks.
Yeah. And also when you think about some of the descriptions of things they have to do with the tabernacle and moving and all that, it took a lot of people to do this.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
And so the first chapter there is counting them all. The Levites are exempt. They just work in the tabernacle.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
And I saw something I never really noticed before, which was really cool. It's in verse 51 of Numbers. It says, the tabernacle when it's set out, the Levites shall take it down. And when the tabernacle is to be pitched, the Levites shall set it up. And any outsider who comes near, they'll put to death.
Right.
So I saw
get near it.
I saw the priesthood though in a different way. Like as a kid growing up, I just thought of them as like this priestly dudes that doing their priestly duties.
Yeah.
But this is like, the John Wick Assassin's Creed Levites that
they're like guards.
They're like guards.
Yeah.
Like it's holy.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't come near it, and if you do, they're going to take care of you, which is what they did in Exodus at the golden calf incident. It was the Levites that
Right.
stood up
That's
and
right.
killed 3,000 people.
Wow.
So yeah, I saw that a whole different light there in Numbers
Yeah.
1.
Don't mess with the Levites.
Mm-mm.
In chapter 2, there it gets into the arrangement of the camp. The tents are sort of, or the clans and tribes are organized around the tent of meetings or the tabernacle, whichever way you want to say. I thought it was cool how it was talking about like the hierarchy of these places, that they called them clans sometimes when I was reading, which
Yeah,
was
big
cool.
time.
And they had their own banners and stuff.
Yeah, ensigns
Like,
and banners.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
And what's cool too, once again, just the scope of this epic scope of this
Yeah, it's huge.
people, like the tabernacle and the Levites, the all that stuff was in the center.
Right.
Both when they camped and both when they went on the move. So it was like concentric circles.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was in the center, and you could just visualize out in the middle of nowhere this massive amount of people with this holy place in the center where God resides. Like that's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's amazing. Let's see. 3, again, it mentions these guys who brought the wrong incense. They keep, I feel like they've come up before. They keep
Yeah.
talking about them.
No, it's a huge example of the what not to do.
Yeah.
How you approach God and His holiness.
Yeah, and the talks also, the Levites are directly under Aaron and his family. They're consecrated to be used in the tabernacle. And there's thousands of them.
Yeah.
Of just the Levites. I mean, just this one clan, they start giving the numbers there. You're like, what in the world?
Yeah.
It's like huge. And as we keep going there's a lot of directions on even how to pack it up, like packing directions on the tabernacle. And
Yeah, it's you don't mess around with it.
Yeah,
it's
it's
the holy
amazing.
stuff.
it's like leather. It's like, I would love to have seen what it looked like, and special cloth for it. And
Yeah, and the colors mattered. Like
Yeah.
like certain things were wrapped in blue, like the Ark
mm-hmm.
of the Covenant was in blue. Other things like the altar was in purple.
Yeah,
So it's very royal colors,
yeah,
and that really signified it. And once again, when they're on the march, and that's in the center of their camp, I mean, you'd look and you'd see those blue items,
mm-hmm.
and you'd know that was, the holy stuff, and only they could carry it.
right.
Only they were allowed to do that and touch it, and
Yeah,
some of them, I think, couldn't even come in and look at it until it was covered.
yeah,
It was all
Yeah.
very important stuff as far as God's holiness went.
yeah. And it like you were saying, it was concentric circles. Even once that you got into the tabernacle, it got more and more
Yeah.
serious the further in you went. Till
Totally.
eventually, only like one guy could go in, or
Yeah, and even the tribes that in their encampment, when they were stationary, when they were on the move, that was all intentional too. Like Judah is right there on the east, and they were the first to go outside of them, and so it was all very much intentional.
right.
And I could just imagine that scene too. Like, can you imagine them marching 2 million people with the tabernacle stuff
Wow.
in the middle? It's just like,
Wild.
I want to see that movie.
Yes.
Someone make that movie, please.
Yeah. And the cloud and the fire, the whole deal.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. They get into, again, more of these sort of kind of Levitical laws and things again. There's a really wild one. Well, first they talk about sin again, and it's interesting. There's a part there. It says you confess, you make restitution, and you have to add a fifth to it.
Yeah, 20%.
There's one of those, and then there's a really a kind of disturbing one with the woman who's unfaithful.
Yeah, to see if she's unfaithful.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really strange, and she drinks this bitter poison water.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to process that, to be honest.
Well, and it's
So intense.
unfaithfulness that's at the core of the issue. And I read a commentator, I forget his name, I think it's Wenham, but he said that it was very much likened to when Moses ground up the golden calf
Yeah.
and made them drink it,
Mhm.
like that same sort of bitterness to prove the unfaithfulness.
Right.
But somehow it was supposed to induce like a
miscarriage.
a miscarriage, and if that happened, then that was obviously, her condemnation, and if it didn't, then she was innocent. It's hard for us in 2022 to wrap our minds around that sort of thing, because it got one of those times where it's good to remind yourself that this is thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Ancient culture, ancient practices,
Yeah.
But at the same time, holiness was super important.
Right.
And they're just constantly reminding us, looking back to Leviticus and saying, look, this is a holy God. He can only be approached certain ways. And these are some of the ways that are a no-go.
Yeah. And as it keeps going here, this is one of my favorite, the Nazirite vows.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. I don't totally understand what that meant to do that vow. I just know it. Some of the things they couldn't do, it says. They couldn't drink strong drink or anything from the grapevine. They couldn't cut their hair.
Yeah.
They couldn't be near a dead body.
Anything unclean.
So was that like a vow to help at the tabernacle?
Exactly.
Or? Okay.
So they were like the monks and the nuns of ancient Israel.
And you could like sign up for it?
Yeah.
Like a regular person?
So only Levites could do the priestly duties.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to be a Levite. So, I mean, you couldn't just, that was a done deal. But you could do something like the Nazirite vow and do some of that stuff as like a lay person where you were still part of the ministry there.
Wow.
Just not with those exact priestly duties. But that's why it was temporary.
Yeah.
And they were pretty hardcore things. I mean, there's lots of famous Nazirites. John the Baptist was thought to be a Nazirite. Samson.
Samson, yeah.
Samson,
Yeah.
which is, I can't wait till we get there.
Cut
What a
his
wild
hair.
story.
That was part of it.
Because Samson was not really like a good dude.
He's kind of breaking all the vows there.
Yeah.
And there in 6, one of the most famous passages, one of my favorites of all. I'll just read it here. It's the blessing.
The best.
God tells Aaron and his sons, this is how you bless the Israelites. It says, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them.
It's so good.
I mean, that's, I don't know what it is about that, but it just, that gets me, that resonates deeply.
Oh, it's powerful.
His face shine upon you and, peace toward, it's like what we want. It's like what we want as humans. Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, it became a centerpiece of the Israelite faith. It's you see it on Psalm 121. It says the Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep you going out and you're coming in. And Psalm 67 says, may God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine upon us.
Yeah.
It was just part of their identity, which
Right.
is that shalom.
Yeah.
It's that shalom, total person wholeness, health, prosperity, peace, the whole package. That's
Yeah.
what it meant to be identified with this God.
And blessed.
Yeah,
And
blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's see here. 7, and then we go right into.
Oh man, 7's one of those struggle bucket passages in Scripture. It's like 89 verses.
It's offerings.
It's exact same offering 12 times,
Yeah.
word for word.
Yeah.
So it's easy to gloss.
I might have glossed a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah. It's important
because it does seem to repeat it. It's each person, and then he brought this. Just like the other guy.
But you know what's cool though? It does show you the volume of what they had to carry.
Yeah.
And the weight, and I mean it was a big deal.
And it's cool because all that stuff they were bringing was used specifically by the Levites in the tabernacle.
Yeah. All very important stuff, which is, if we're ready to go to 8, which is one of the coolest things.
One last thing in 7, the one part I didn't gloss over, it says at the end there, the Lord speaks to Moses from between the 2 cherubim on the ark.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So good.
That's wild. between these two angel wings.
Yeah.
He talks to him.
Well, the tabernacle is always likening back to the Garden of Eden, where God dwelled with them and was in their presence and walked with them and talked with them. And then, of course, when they were expelled, their two cherubim were put there.
Yeah.
So that was part of the whole concept there at the mercy seat on the ark, was those cherubim from the garden.
Wow.
And so
that's cool.
that represents where God dwells with his people, like the very epicenter there at the garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Great.
so, it's amazing.
Cool. Then we get into 8. It talks about the Levites being set apart, some ritual cleansing for them as well.
Mm-hmm. And that was a big deal, too, the set apart thing, because all of Israel were supposed to be considered the firstborn. They were all supposed to be the children of God in that sense. But the golden calf incident, it changed all that.
Really?
So then it became the Levites. So they were the ones that were redeemed as the firstborn instead of all of it Israel, which goes back to chapter 3 as well.
Yeah, and I put this in my notes because Aaron and his sons and his family are still super involved. That struck me as like, how did this guy get the grace?
Well, he repented, I guess.
He was right there in the thick of all that craziness.
He made the cow.
He made it.
And then lied about how he did it too.
And then he still ends up running the tabernacle pretty much. So it's like,
it's a huge role.
Yeah.
It's huge. And later Numbers, the Lord speaks to Aaron too.
Well, yeah.
But what I saw in 8 is just like, if you like the sci-fi side of things, is the lampstand there in the tabernacle.
Yeah.
It's just amazing because it kind of evokes the imagery of the tree of life.
Oh yeah.
Big time. But the way that it's set up, it says it's like a light show. It's like this golden light show. It's meant to illuminate the showbread on the table, but everything in there, the show table, where the bread's set, the walls, everything is coated in gold.
Oh wow.
So it says that it specifically is supposed to face that bread, but the walls, the table, everything's plated in gold, so it's like this, you can't not see this bread, and this is 12 loaves, the 12 tribes of Israel. We just read it, the blessing, make his face shine upon you. It's that whole imagery of like, it's just this fullness of God's presence just illuminating. I don't know, it's so cool.
So you think it was bright in there then?
Oh, big time.
Okay. In my mind, I always pictured it kind of dark in the
not
or whatever.
Well, that's not the center.
Okay.
That's right before, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So no, but that part is like, it's like a light show in there.
Wow.
You could light this lampstand. Everything's plated in gold. So it makes me think of that scene from Indiana Jones where he's got to put the staff exactly perfectly so it lights exactly where the thing is in the map room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool.
Awesome.
We keep going here. 9. We're celebrating Passover. Again, he's talking about a cloud in the day and a fire by night.
Yeah, it's the. I was got to think it's like their Waze. It's their Apple Maps, their GPS.
Yeah, they would leave when the cloud lifted.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's days. Sometimes it's like one night or whatever.
And how powerful too! It's like it's been more or less a year. It's the second Passover.
Yeah. In 10, they talk about that he has them make trumpets, silver trumpets, and it talks about specifically there's like calls, like 2 trumpet blasts just for everybody. Just one is for the heads of the family.
Just the leaders, yeah.
They use it to go into battle. They use it in the day of rejoicing over the offering.
They use it in their celebrations, the Day of Atonement.
I thought it was interesting when they set out, Moses always says, "Rise up, Lord, may your enemies be scattered, may your foes flee before you." And when it came to rest, he'd say, "Return, Lord, to the countless thousands of Israel."
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, once again, that whole thing of that giant group of people on the march with those trumpets blasting is just
it's
epic.
Yeah, totally.
And then there's a whole thing, too. It's a huge rabbit hole we won't go down, but Hobab?
I don't remember.
Yeah, at the very end, it talks about it could be his brother-in-law, or it could be a different name for
yeah.
Jethro.
Yeah, it's Jethro's son.
Jethro's son, but some people think that it's like another name for Jethro, I think.
Okay.
Or, I don't know. Like I said, it's a rabbit hole.
Right.
But I love it because it seems intentional to me that they bring that back, because Jethro is the one who really helped Moses
Yeah.
with his delegation, with dealing with issues and drama, and that's what chapter 11 is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So it's like it seems like a logical, as a narrator, it seems like a logical segue.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds you about this Jethro dude
Yeah.
and that family, because here we go.
Wow.
Here we go again.
Yeah. So so it seemed like we were doing pretty good.
Yeah.
And we get to 11 and things take a turn for the worse. So the people start complaining about their hardships. God gets really mad. He starts a fire on the edge of the camp. Starts, I guess, burning. People are dying. And this is so fascinating. The people are crying to Moses, then Moses prays to God, and God stops it.
Yeah. Well, I love it. At one point, Moses says, "Kill me."
Yes. Yeah, he's done that before, too.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is pretty incredible.
But it's always in the sense of his mediation.
Yeah.
As a mediator, you know?
Yeah.
But it's amazing because they're complaining. It's the whole Egypt was better thing. And I love it, too. It mentions specifically that the rabble spoke
Somewhere
up.
from Egypt, right?
And I think what they are talking about when they mention the rabble amongst them is the people that came with them. The non-Israelites that left with them, that kind of repented or saw that Yahweh was the true Most High living God through those signs and those wonders, and they went with them. And it seems like they're the ones that kind of started
and they're
this
probably
ruckus.
Probably even extra displaced. They miss their home.
Like, hey, remember all that good stuff?
Right.
You know? And they're already forgotten about the slavery and the making bricks and taking their straw away. And
these are like obviously, amazing examples for life. Life examples here. The people were weeping and complaining, and it says Moses saw it as evil, and God was mad. There's this complaining thing that's actually pretty serious.
It is, and it's also unbelief and lack of faith.
Yes.
And him providing.
Yeah.
So the quail storm happens.
Yes. And God says he'll give them enough till it comes out of their nose.
Yeah, out of their nostrils.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And Moses, at the same time, we were just talking about how he was ready to die for these people. He's talking to God, and he's like, why did you give me these people?
Yeah, your people.
No,
they're your people.
Now it's back to God.
Yeah.
He calls them babies. Why do I have to take care of these babies? And actually, then maybe this is just a saying, right? Then, and he says, if this is the way it's going to be, then just kill me.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah. So then he gets some more leaders to try to help him out. Moses, the quail come, and then a plague comes as well. So God was not happy, and then we get to 12, and it's
more conflict.
More
drama.
conflict. Now it's Miriam and Aaron are complaining about Moses's Cushite wife, and he's challenging Moses' leadership too, really. He's saying, hasn't God also spoke through us? And this is a passage where it says Moses is more humble than any man on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And I love it. God's like asking them, why aren't you afraid of him? Like, don't you know that I'm with him?
Yeah.
No,
he calls out. He says, he tells them, Moses is my real deal prophet.
Yeah.
I speak to others in dreams and visions, but to him, it's the clear revelation. He's my man. It's like he comes to his defense.
Yeah. And Miriam eventually gets leprous skin, has to be quarantined. And that's the end of that part. Then we get into Moses sending people to check out Canaan.
Yeah, it's one of the most important parts of the overarching narrative of the history of Israel.
This section right
This
here.
It's like a linchpin moment,
Yeah.
like big time.
Yeah, and so this is the land that flows with milk and honey, and they go in and they bring fruit back,
Yeah.
and they say it's fortified city with large walls and powerful people. And then, of course, Caleb silences them. He speaks up and says, "We should go up and take possession of the land. We can definitely do it." Which is a pretty incredible faith from Mr. Caleb there.
Yeah, well, I think it's really seen in 13. You're seeing faith versus unbelief.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Two different responses. And it's big because this is the original covenant promise. This is the whole promise personified.
Yeah.
That God made originally from Abraham on, that it was his intention and his desire and his plan for them to do this. And that's why it becomes such a linchpin moment. I mean, it's a big deal because to not do it is to completely just say, you don't believe in that covenant promise.
Right. And again, the bad report spreads everywhere. They're saying there's Nephilim there. They're stronger than us. We're like grasshoppers. And the people then, when we get to 14, are complaining again, saying, "We wish we died in Egypt, or we could go back to Egypt." Joshua and Caleb are sort of yelling back at them to not be afraid. And the people literally want to stone them at one point. They're so upset about this. And then it gets into this part where God has kind of had it.
Yeah, and he comes to their defense, right?
Moses? Yes. God says, "How long will they treat me with contempt?" So he's seeing this complaining and fear and unbelief as contempt, literal contempt towards him.
Yep.
And it's interesting too. He says, "Despite all the signs I've shown them," and there's an interesting kind of responsibility for what they've seen, so clearly in front of them, and they're still acting a certain way.
Their unbelief, yeah. And he once again proposes the smackdown. Wipe him out.
Yeah.
Start over again with Moses. And once again, you see it's unbelievable. You see Moses, the mediator.
Yeah.
And he reminds God of his covenant promises. He's literally quoting Exodus 34. In 18, he says, "The Lord is slow to anger." He reminds him, "Lord, you're slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. By no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers and the children to the third and the fourth generations." He reminds God.
Yeah.
Reminds him. Yeah. He's like, that's part of his mediator role. Like,
that's amazing.
He's like, remember, these are your covenant people. You promised.
Yeah. It's amazing.
We've got to continue.
Yeah. And so he spares Joshua and Caleb, the guys who brought a bad report. It says they're struck with a plague. And God says, 40 years you'll be in the wilderness, and your children will inherit it, but you won't.
You know what's fascinating is he actually gives them exactly what they asked for.
Yeah.
Earlier,
right.
He forgives them, but he gives them what they want, which is a trip back to the Red Sea towards Egypt to die in the wilderness.
Yeah.
That was almost their exact words.
Yeah, they kind of spoke this into existence.
Yeah, which is another really, good kind of biblical principle to watch what you confess and speak into existence.
Absolutely. And so we keep going here, and it's so crazy, these knuckleheads here. So God says, "Go into Canaan," and they say no. And then he says, okay, now you're going to have to go in the wilderness. And then they get presumptuous and
To
say,
go fight without him.
no, we're going to go do it now.
Yeah.
Like, which is so strange. Like, total 180. They were just ready to stone somebody over this. And Moses tells them not to, but they go anyway, and they get beat.
Yeah.
And
They get chased
yeah, they get
for a while, and yeah. You know what's crazy too, because it goes into the 15, which is our last chapter that we're doing this week. But I saw this too. It's after each failure of Israel, it seems like that's when more laws are added, or at the very least a reminder, which is exactly what Paul said in Galatians 3. He said, "Why then the law? It was added because of transgressions, until the offspring would come to whom the promise had been made."
That's fascinating.
And it was ordained through angels by a mediator. Yeah, so it's like, it almost seems like every time they do this, God's got these little reset buttons. Like, all right, here we go.
He's got to kind of ring them in.
Ring them in. It's like a parent, with kids.
Yeah,
like a correction.
They lost some privileges there.
Yeah, and so in 15 is going to remind them of these sacrifices and these, the stuff that was established in Leviticus, but I think, and then a couple things are added.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's pretty good for that part. Numbers. Is there any more in there? 15?
Yeah, it's just the only thing that's added is there's a libation offering, which is because they went into Canaan and the promised land, they brought back like grapes.
Oh yeah.
So like that was one of the things that was added was that it was a pouring out. This is awful, but it made me think of like rap culture, like pouring out for my homies,
That's where it started.
Yeah,
right
there
here.
you go.
Right here. Okay, so that was we went quite a while on our Old Testament. We'll jump in. Let's do it all in one here. So
sure.
we'll jump over to our New Testament reading, and we're starting in Mark. We just started, I think, last week in Mark, and we're now at Mark 3. And let's see, where are we jumping in here? Again, Jesus is healing on the Sabbath. This sort of consistent problem comes up in all the Gospels.
What's the Sabbath made for?
Yeah. And they plot to kill him. And this is interesting, too. When he runs into people who are possessed with demon spirits, they're always know who he is ahead of time. Like, what's up with that?
I see it with Mark early on, especially. It's like the battle of two kingdoms.
Yeah.
It's like a showdown.
But it's really, I don't understand, like, how they know who he is.
Yeah, and it's like Mark really emphasizes, too, like, they know who he is, but the humans don't.
Yeah.
They're clueless, but they seem to know.
Yeah. And so there in 3, he appoints the 12 disciples. He sends them out to preach the gospel, and he empowers them there. Another amazing section here. Jesus goes back to his hometown. Or wait, is this that part?
No, we're not there yet.
No. Sorry. But it does say his family says he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
At this part, and they try to take hold of him. That is in 3. And that's a part where they're talking about he's
casting out demons by the prince of demons.
Yeah.
Beelzebub.
And he's talking about the kingdom divided against itself won't stand.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite passages there, he's talking about the strong man, tying up the strong man and going into his house to plunder it. And it doesn't give. It's also interesting the differences in the Gospels. This one doesn't give a lot of the same details there. Mm-hmm. The other ones say a little more about it, where I just saw it a while ago that the plunder is us that he's talking about there. He's talking about tying up the God of this world, actually, and coming to get us out, actually. He talks about the blaspheming the Holy Spirit,
Mm.
assigning evil to good, basically.
Yeah.
To the Holy Spirit.
Which is like a big deal that's like a passage that's bothered people forever, because
Yeah.
especially ones that are sensitive.
Unpardonable.
Yeah, like, is that me?
Mhm.
You know? And I think it was Keith Moore I heard one time, a minister. I think he said that if you're worried that that's you, it's not you.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a worry or a concern, then it's obviously not you. And really, what they're saying is that blasphemy is you're likening his ministry to the satanic.
Mm.
Like, you're literally calling you're calling the Holy Spirit Satan.
Yeah.
When you do that.
Yeah. It's kind of built into it that the unforgiveness, because it's the way it is.
Like, it is so over the top. You are like, that's extra.
Yeah.
That's extreme. You are taking what's the ministry of Jesus
But I
and
can
saying
see
that it's
the
satanic.
way it's written. It seems like something you could accidentally do.
Yeah, if you don't understand the context there,
And then you're just stuck.
totally.
You know.
Yeah, but he's just now said that he's been accused of casting out demons by the Prince of Demons,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's all in context together there.
Mm.
That's why that's a blasphemy.
Yeah, and the end there again. This is such an amazing passage where his mom and his brother show up, and he says, "Who is my brother and who is my mother?" These are my mothers and brothers and sisters. Whoever does the will of God is my brother, and my mother and my sister, and it's just like such a. He's so turning everything on its head here. Even in, back then it was huge, but now with all of our intense culture wars and identity politics and all these things, family ties, clans, all that stuff. He's just sort of like, even down to his own mom saying, that's not my identity. He's so, connected to the Father.
Yeah, he's
that's
redefining
really,
what family is.
really what the tie that binds.
Yeah.
Amazing. Let's see. We get into 4 here. A famous parable, the sower's parable. Sows seed. Let's see. You want to go through these here?
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. And there's one thing, too, I think that we could just briefly pause on that I think is another one of those passages that's kind of people struggle with. Let's see here. It's Mark 4. It's classic. Let's see.
Is it the
He says
in that parable?
Yeah, it's the parables period that everything comes in parables in order that they may indeed look but not perceive, and may indeed listen but not understand, so that they may not turn again and be forgiven.
Yeah, 4:12 there. I think.
Yeah, and that's like really intense. And if you don't understand that context there, it doesn't make any sense. But he's actually quoting straight up Isaiah 6, where the prophet is called to proclaim God's message to ancient Israel, and where he is told by God that though his message of warning will not be heeded, he is to give it anyway.
Oh, wow.
So he's got to do this.
Yeah.
And even when the response is negative, it's not going to deter him.
Yeah.
Because some people just are not going to respond. It's a free will thing.
Wow.
And so when I saw it from that light, it really helped me, because that's a tough one to wrap your head around, because it sounds like, he's purposely saying things that people won't understand.
Yeah, right.
It's not at all. It's meant to challenge you and make the hearer respond in repentance or rejection.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
trying to evoke a response.
Yeah.
Which is what this opening parable is all about.
Yeah. Right. And so I'll just go through these. So there's some seeds fell by the road and the birds ate it. Then some by the rocks. There's no soil. It springs up quick and the sun withers it. Then there's some by the thorns that choke it. And then there's good soil that produces crop 30, 60, 100 times. And then when they keep going down there, they ask him to explain it. and he's saying the seed is the word. And the first one is Satan stealing it. The second one is no roots. They receive with joy, but trouble of the world comes and kills it. The worry of wealth and desire of things. Let's see here. And then there's that amazing part where he's talking about the measure you use, given to you. Those who have more is given. Those who don't lose it all.
Yeah.
Goes right into that. Pretty amazing example, though, of the importance of the word.
Yeah.
In this whole situation of that process, which still, I think, resonates the most, and it makes the most sense of hearing the word, why it's so important to hear it often, receive it, and cultivate it in our lives to grow in all of the sort of trouble that can take it away, or our cares, or all these kinds of things.
And I see it too in our call to actually distribute the seed too, still to preach, and that the way they did that, the casting the seed is actually, the practice was called broadcasting. So they called it broadcast seed. So you're broadcasting the gospel.
Yeah.
And the way you respond is important. It's really kind of a parable of two soils.
Yeah.
One that produces, and the others, there's one that produces and three that don't.
Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, just growing up in church and being in church for all these years, I've seen all of these.
Yeah. Oh, to this day, it's
you
time.
see it happen all the time. So
yeah, and for me, it's that third one it's a daily struggle. The cares of the world and worries and all that stuff, and it segues to the rest of 4 beautifully with the seed motif. Just talking about the what's the first seed there? It's before the mustard seed.
What are you talking about?
Parable of the growing seed. He talks about the kingdom of God. Kingdom of God is if someone would scatter seed on the ground and would sleep and rise night and day, and the seed would sprout and grow. He does not know how. That it is growing. There is supernatural growth behind it, which goes into the mustard seed right there.
Right. Yeah, and it keeps going, and it ends there. They're on the trip across the sea. And this is like a famous one. And a storm comes up, and Jesus is asleep. And they say, "Master, don't you care?
I love it.
Why don't you care about us?" And Jesus gets up and rebukes the wind and says, "Be still," to the waves. And he says, "Why are you afraid?" It's an incredible story. I probably heard many a message, sermons just on that one short passage there. We'll keep moving along here. Okay, so 5, they land on the shore and they run into a possessed man who lived in the tombs, and they've been trying to chain this guy up. He's been breaking out.
That's nuts.
Some kind of superpowers or something.
Yeah.
It says he cries out night and day, cutting himself, living in the tombs. Again, they recognize who Jesus is. Ask him if he's there to torture them, which is strange.
Yeah, it says their name is Legion, which denotes like thousands.
Wild. And then a strange, I don't totally understand this, but they're asking to go into the pigs.
Yeah.
And then Jesus grants it. It says, okay.
Well, in chapter 5, you see 3 examples of Jesus ministering to what the Jews would call unclean. Unclean people. There's 3 in a row. Boom, boom, boom. So this one is unclean, first of all, it's demon possession, but also you know that he's in a Gentile region because they're herding pigs.
Oh, yeah.
So right there you know.
Yeah.
That's a tell, because no self-respecting Jew is going to have a herd of pigs.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's 2,000 of them, it says, and he says that he has a legion, which could be up to 6,000 in a Roman legion.
Yeah.
So it's intense language.
Yeah.
So he casts them out. They go into the pigs. They drown themselves.
Yeah. And
which is like the behavior he was evoking too, like that self-destructive, like evil.
Yeah, don't even.
It's amazing.
Crazy. And my favorite part, though, the end of it. The townspeople are afraid and tell him to leave.
Yeah, take off, dude.
He performs
This is weird.
this amazing miracle. He heals this guy, and it freaks him out, and they ask him to leave.
Yeah. Well, it's cool, too. We're going to see, too, so that's like a Gentile response. That's on the negative. And we're going to see one later with the little girl, too, where they make fun of him and mock him. Which moves us on to the second unclean person, and that's the woman with the issue of blood.
Right. And again, he's in the middle of a crowd, and he says, "Who touched me?"
I felt power go out.
Yeah,
I
and
love that.
It's amazing because you see, I was listening to a teaching on this. He was saying how you can see Jesus is working on some level in a human capacity. Like he wasn't playing a trick, like who touched me? Like he really didn't know.
Yeah, wink, wink.
Yeah, like who touched me? I know. I really know this lady did it. Like he was living as a human. Like what?
Yeah.
Who just touched me? And amazing. He says, "Your faith has healed you."
Another big motif in Mark: faith versus unbelief.
Huge passage.
And there's so much there too. Like she shouldn't have been near people, according to their like we just been going through Leviticus and Numbers and their Old Testament readings. She shouldn't have been anywhere near people.
True, yeah.
Their cleanliness rules.
She was breaking the rules.
She was breaking the rules to even be there, and she would have ritualistically made everyone in that crowd unclean that she touched. Which is, I forget if it's a day or 7 days for that one.
Right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And for Jesus to still love on her and minister to him, it's another huge moment in his ministry where he's in contact with the unclean, which we'll see later on too, with people with leprosy and everything else.
Right. And it ends there with the synagogue leader's daughter.
Yeah.
Correct? And
which is amazing too, because the lady had an issue of blood for 12 years, and then it will tell us that this girl is 12 years old. And Mark's so matter of fact. I love it. When I first came back to this church in 2007, I heard your mom, Pastor Katrina, do a message on Mark, and she called it the businessman's gospel.
Oh yeah,
because it's just direct, you know.
Yeah.
And so he's not given any details that aren't intentional. So I think those 12 and 12s are very significant.
Yeah.
And you think to the 12 tribes of Israel, and these are both Jewish examples. The pigs guy, demoniac, was Gentile region. This is a Jewish region. So that 12 is very
there's like layers,
significant.
Layers of meaning there.
And that's another unclean thing. You can't touch a dead girl.
And I like it too, because this is a synagogue leader, you know, a religious guy.
Yeah.
And
they weren't all against him.
Yeah, they can't be.
No.
This guy actually went to him for help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of good to see. One of those guys coming around.
Yeah, and I love that. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I've always loved that Aramaic saying, where it's more or less says just, what is it? Get up, little girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tells him
it just
she's
seems so
asleep.
sweet. Yeah. Just wake up, little girl.
Yeah, love it.
And they said they made fun of him. They were mocking him.
Yeah, amazing. And we'll he gets into more mocking. We'll finish up here. We'll go into 6.
Yep.
This is the part I was talking about when he goes to his hometown. And 6:3, they're saying, "Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's incredible. Just the power of familiarity, in like the power in reverse. You know, literally sucking the power out of the situation by being over familiar, you know.
That's a great way to put it, because that's going to inform what he could and couldn't do.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, totally.
shortly after.
And I mean, this was for Jesus, and I always think about this in our individual lives, like how we our families know us, how we know ourselves, and then how the Father knows us is still on a whole different level of our own familiarity with ourselves, you know.
Right.
And so he says he can't do the miracles because of their lack of faith. He's amazed by it.
And what's amazing to you, though, just highlighting his compassion and his calling. It says he could do no miracle there except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. So he did nothing. And it's not that he did nothing, but their unbelief hindered what maybe could have happened.
Yeah.
That was happening in other regions.
Right.
Which segues great into the next part where he sends out the 12.
Yep, they're teaching town to town, and he sends them out to preach and gives them authority over spirits.
Yeah, and Pastor Jeff just talked about this on Sunday in our Keys to the Kingdom series.
Given
how
authority.
we have that same authority. We've
Kinda
been
knighted.
Knighted. Yep.
Yeah, love it.
So good.
And we end there on a rough spot, kind of.
Which is sandwiched out of nowhere, kind of. I love it.
Yeah, it comes almost in passing. They're kind of, I forget what it is. They're talking about something else, and kind of goes into the story.
Well, I think for me, he talks about how they should go out and they should go with very little and live modestly and be content with whatever they're given and accept the hospitality. And when it's not given, I love it. Shake your feet, shake the dust off your feet.
Right.
And then it goes straight into recalling the fate of John the Baptist.
Yeah.
But you're going from that, like Paul said, where he's learned to be content with anything, and all of a sudden the scenery is changing to this like palace setting, and this horrible Herod, and his gluttony and his over extravagance, and this crazy story about his wife.
Yeah, the story is really fascinating. I don't totally understand it, but there's some strange details in it. It's basically John the Baptist has called Herod out for being with his brother's wife,
which was a no-no for a Jew. You could not marry your brother's wife.
And it actually Herod doesn't take offense to it. His wife does. She gets really mad. Herod's kind of doesn't want to mess with them, it sounds like.
Seems like he's intrigued by him.
Yeah, and so his wife, who is Herodias,
cool name.
Which is, it gets weirder, has her daughter dance for him, and then he makes a pledge he'll do anything.
And it says that he and the men were pleased, and the dance, it's most likely, it was probably a sensual, like suggestive dance, kind of just more, just kind of what's the right word, decadence, this whole palace decadence. And I have this little commentary on Mark by Larry Hurtado. He pointed this out, which blew my mind, because John was likened to be the prophet Elijah, like that was prophesied to make straight the path and announce the way before Jesus. And he says that Herod is likened to King Ahab, and that Herodias is likened to Jezebel, to John's Elijah. It says all these parallels to that same kind of story in the Old Testament, which I thought was really cool.
That is cool.
And then, of course, it ends with a beheading, which is...
Yes, on a plate. That's a famous one.
On a plate, which is, once again, it kind of lends to that whole decadence of what was going on at that party, almost like it was this gross meal being served.
Yeah, that's true. It's just kind of over the top.
It's like, right before it, you were seeing the way of Jesus and his disciples and the way they did things, and then all of a sudden the scenery changes to this just kind of icky story.
And then it ends. We'll end here. 32, actually, this last one. It goes into another story, but I like ending here. So the disciples come back and they're reporting their mission, and Jesus wants to take them to a solitary place to rest. At least that's what I have there in 32. So we'll rest there.
Yeah.
After all of that, we covered a lot of ground today. Just amazing stuff, and I love all these parallels and cross references going on here. And thankfully, we're ending on a place of rest for a moment here.
Yeah.
after poor John's end there. So, anything else there, Ty? Did we miss anything?
No, I think.
Okay. So thank you.
Ground.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Keep following us here at the Life Point Table Talk. We'll be coming in next week with week 9 and continue with our reading. Check out our app, the Life Point app, Life Point Church app.
Go to Bible tab and hit on that word plan and just jump in. Don't have to catch up. Just jump in with us right where we are.
Yep. And follow the podcast. Keep tuning in. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Peace.